Hey there, welcome to the Mountain of God. My name is Camille. Today is 25th of May 2021. Welcome to video number 35. Today I want to talk about paying attention to details. And I want to talk about it because there's a much bigger, much more complex game that Father is playing with all of us. Let me explain. Listen, the fact that nothing happens or everything happens for a reason, everything is intentional, it's kind of obvious. We talked about it already, and whole, even self-development people talk about it all the time. That it's kind of logical that if something happens and you pay attention to details, you can end up in a completely different place. Simple example. Let's say that for some reason you become a little bit negative. And you start to see, because of some experience, you start to see world in much darker colors than it is. If you don't stop, in a year or two, you're going to end up being a very negative person. And maybe you won't see the difference, but the person who will not see you for a year, they'll meet you, they'll say, whoa, something bad happened to that person. And in a positive side, if you consciously decide to change the way you speak, change the language that you use, change the words that you use, maybe if even the same things would happen to you, you end up in a completely different place just because of your conscious decisions. Especially in the long run, in the long term, they will change how you see things and how you react to them. So the same thing happens with something that you do, right? If you have the same approach, deciding to do rather things positively than negatively, you pay attention to details, it'll exactly end up in a different place. And it's even interesting to see that it will have impact on others, because just think about it. How many times you've seen someone say something or do something that will have impact on you, and it changed your life completely, but if you ask them, they will never remember that this thing happened. And interestingly enough, it may inspire you to change your life, or it can scar you for years. That's why you don't even know how your choices, your decisions on how you speak or how you live will have an impact on you, because you won't see the change. But then you don't even know how much it'll change other people's lives, just because you don't know when you say that something's going to have meaning and it will matter for them. So that's the first thing. Everything is happening for a reason. But then if you look at the spiritual side of things, it becomes even more interesting. Because one thing that, it's already supposed to understand that this world was not created from this level. God is not a three-dimensional entity creating a three-dimensional world. No, he's a spiritual entity, he only knows how many dimensions, and he creates this three-dimensional world. So if you understand the roots of this world are in a spirit, in a spiritual realm, not in here. Everything started there. Everything was born there, and it kind of spawned this reality. So that's why everything that you're experiencing, everything that matters here, will have its spiritual equivalent. And interestingly enough, you can start with physics, start to see, about how really this world works, and you can see that everything is constant motion. Everything has kind of impact on other things. Like you start to see the frequencies, you start to see how quantum physics opens the door to completely crazy theories and crazy reality that we live in, that you start to see that you have to understand it completely differently, because it's hard to understand and hard to comprehend sometimes. But then you start to see that there are things that would strictly have a spiritual side on them. Let's say music. My family was always into music, for generations. They were singing and playing instruments. But then you start to see, okay, but what do you see about music in a spiritual realm? And you can see that there's music and praise over all the time around God's throne. You can see the major elements, major stories in the Bible. there's always in the music, there's always a praise and worship. And you start to see, wow, so it means that it is important. And that's why you start to see that music is used by God and is used by Satan to destroy as much as he can. And that's one of the good lessons. The more you see that Satan is obsessed about something, it means that it's more important. Some of the things are very important, like music, like intimacy or sexuality. If you see how much he's obsessed about it, you'll know how important it is. So, okay, so everything is put there for a reason. It's intentional. Second, everything will have its own spiritual side of things. So there's always, if something is important for you, it will have some importance in the spirit. So then it's okay, it makes our understanding of the world much deeper, much bigger, you can see the complexity and understand the intertwinings of all of those things. But then if you understand that it's not just about general truths, but God put something in your life, then you start to think, what that's supposed to mean. And that's why that's why I'm saying to pay attention to details, because I want you to see those small things that happen in your life. See those small things that they're seemingly completely irrelevant, but they're there. There's always something that you can see in the background that you don't really pay attention to, but it's always there. And you say, is that intentional that it's there? Should I do something about it? And in my case, there are a few things. But one of the things that I want to talk about is drums. Drums. It never was my thing. My brother was always fascinated and obsessed with it. From a really young age, when we were just young boys, he used pens and pencils and just played on the pillows and notebooks and so on. And maybe because of that, it was somewhere there in back of my head, the drums. Okay, but I never used them. I never tried to play myself. It's like, not my thing. But then I led worship for a few years. And we had a great drummer. One of my friends, wow. And I start to see that the drums are starting to play important role. It just they kind of stand out. And I start to think, what would be the reason for it? So then I start to ask Father, what's going, how am I supposed to understand what is the spiritual side of this thing? I'm fascinated with it. Not only in the midst, I just try to play drums to see what's gonna do to me, and I start to see that it makes me feel. I feel the rhythm, and it makes me think. It's just. I love rhythm, but also in the meantime, I was exposed to intercession and spiritual warfare. And then when it one day just clicked, all came together, and I understood that not only I like music, not only I like the rhythm, but then it plays an amazing role, a major role in the intercession, in warfare. Because when you connect worship and warfare, I told you about the battle worship. You start to see that drums were always used for war. And then I understood that there's so much more to it, that God put those things together because they fit. Now I understand I'm able to connect those two pillars that I had in my life, the leading worship and music and so on, and then the intercession and prayer right now. And it all fits. And interestingly enough, not only I started to see that it fits, it's great, that I can see complexity, how God is working in my life, but then I started to understand that it might be used in my calling. I can use music, I can use prayer, and even more, not only it is used in my life because I serve with understanding of music and understanding of rhythm. But also God started to talk to me with this, using this understanding, which is fascinating because when I understood that, from time to time when I enter God's presence, He's not talking to me verbally, He's not saying things to me, but it's enough for me to hear music. It's enough for me to hear the rhythm and I know exactly what's going to happen. Whether it's like a very delicate music that, is going to be praise and worship and it's going to be amazing, or whether I can hear rhythm, I can hear drums of war, because now it's time for intercession. And it's amazing because you can start to see that everything falls into place, and you see that it's intentional. You see the spiritual side of things, and then you start to see that it's used in you, and it's going to be used kind of through you to bless other people. And along the way, God will deepen your relationship with you, because now He started to use those things that you discovered and understood as your own language. Now He's able to communicate with you with your senses, with your imagination. It broadens this whole communication ability tremendously. Interestingly enough, another example. I always was fascinated with photography. I don't know why, I just liked nice pictures. And one day I just basically took camera and just started making photos. One of my friends told me, listen, just take camera and just make photos, and you'll see what will come up out of it. And when I understood that it's fascinating, I start to understand why, from like a human perspective, how you can really read people like an open book, just because you can look in their eyes and there's everything there. But then I start to understand, so I ask, what is the spiritual side of this thing? And God showed me how paying attention, how prophecy and an intercession can work, because when you are able to get this connection in between people, or looking them in the eye, because that's what I was doing, the portrait photography. It's amazing because you are able to kind of really get this very intensive, like, spiritual connection between you two. And then if you understand how it can be used, you can learn really how to bless people, because you can see on their face their pain, you can see everything. It's so easy to help people when you just look at them and you know what's going on. And it all started with one of my friends just telling me, when she observed me making photos, she said, "You like to observe people, don't you?" And just blew my mind. Now I understood what's going on. And then that just took me on a deeper side of things, to show me the spiritual side of things. And he showed me how I can use this ability to observe people to help them and to bless them. So you see, not only now I want you to see that everything is intentional, everything is there for a reason. But then everything is intentional with you. Everything that happened in your life, all those small details that can't you, just like drums, like photography, I didn't know why would that be important in my life. When you pay attention to details, you understand that it's put in your life for a reason. If you ask your Father what is the spiritual side of things, He'll take you on a journey to explain how amazing His understanding and the spiritual side and spiritual roots of things are, having just an implementation, their own human version here. But everything goes to the Spirit. That's where you find the deepest meaning of all of those things. And then He'll tell you, or start to be able to talk to you in this extended way, because He'll be able to use sound, visual cues. He'll be able to use every sense that you have, even your imagination, to build this language that you have with Him. That will deepen your relationship. That will make this whole thing a completely different experience. But at the end of the day, you'll start to see that so many things that you've discovered in your life and experienced, when they fall into place, they fall perfectly. And now, not only you understand much more, you see the spiritual side of things, but now you'll be able to be used. You'll be able to channel God's blessing to everything that you are, everything that will put in you, just because that was the whole point of all of this. So listen, this is what I want you to take from this video. Everything matters. Everything has spiritual side of things. Everything was put in you just because God never plays the simple game. There's always more. There's always something deeper. There's always another layer that you can understand and be amazed and even more importantly, being used to help others, to fulfill your calling, and to basically do what God wants you to do here in between people, and even more. Because what you'll understand is that most of these things that are going to be explained, and most of these things are going to be kind of implemented in you, they're not going to end up here. They're going to be something that's going to work into the future, into the eternity. Because this is the game your Father is playing. He plays the game for a long term. So think about it and do something about it. Because paying attention to details, to those small things, seemingly, completely meaningless, this thing may open a completely new door for you to understand yourself, to understand how deep your Father wants to go in the relationship with you, and how far it can take you with serving people, and even into their eternity, by basically showing you what He put in you intentionally, and how it all plays, and has its roots in the Spirit. If you like this video, like, share, comment. If you didn't, comment as well. Tell me what you think and what is your experience. If there's anything you want me to talk about, just give me a shout. I'll be glad to do it for you. That being said, see you tomorrow.